The light in the upstairs hallway was still on. That shouldn't have meant anything. Not really. She was always forgetful with switches, always walking out of rooms mid-thought, distracted by the next task, the next call, the next whatever. But this time, it stopped him cold. Because it wasn't the bulb's glow that froze him, it was the shadow it cast. There was a shape on the floor by the closet. Small. Folded. Perfectly placed, like it had been set there carefully, not dropped. At first, he thought it was hers, a sweater maybe, or one of those silk scarves she wore when she wanted to feel expensive. But when he stepped closer, what caught his eye wasn't the fabric. It was the tag. Not hers. Not even close. It was a men's undershirt, plain and unfamiliar, still warm from skin. Black, not white. Crew neck. Faded from wash, but folded like it had just been removed with intention. No label he recognized. And that was the crack, not the shirt itself, but its presence. Its impossibility. It didn't belong to him. And she hated black undershirts. Said they looked funeralish. He'd never worn one in his life. He didn't move for a long moment. Just stared at it, as if it might morph into something that made sense. But it didn't. It stayed still, like it was watching him back. Like it was proud. The house was quiet. Dead quiet. She was still out, book club tonight, she said. Her third one this year. He always found it funny how every book club involved more wine than literature and more new faces than returning ones. But he never asked questions. She needed her space. Her freedom. And he needed the quiet. But the shirt made everything too quiet. He picked it up. Slowly. Like handling evidence. It smelled faintly of detergent, not theirs. Subtle, citrusy, too crisp. Foreign. It was dry, recently worn, freshly folded. Not a gym shirt. Not a forgotten relic. This had been here less than a day, and it hadn't come in on his back. He didn't call her. He didn't check the cameras. He didn't start a fight with a ghost. Instead, he walked downstairs with the shirt hanging limp in his hand, almost like a dead bird. He placed it on the armrest of the couch, sat beside it, and stared at the ceiling. For 30 minutes. Maybe more. Long enough for the light outside to change color. The mind's a strange thing when it knows something it can't yet say out loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers. Like a leaky pipe behind drywall. At first, you just notice the damp. But then you start smelling rot. Feeling it in the floorboards. He thought of the guest house. The rental unit above the garage. The one she insisted they offer up for a bit of extra income. The one with the keypad lock she said was more convenient for guests. He never paid attention to who came or went. She managed the listings. Handled the app. Changed the code regularly. She said privacy was important. That word echoed now. Privacy. He stood, walked to the back door, and looked out toward the detached garage. The window above flickered with soft yellow light. Someone was home. Only it wasn't listed this week. The app pinged his phone with each new booking. He was sure of that. He hadn't seen one in 3 days. But the light was on. And someone had folded a shirt like they lived here. A strange calm settled over him. Not anger. Not yet. Something heavier. Something that made everything too quiet to breathe in. He walked back to the living room, sat again beside the shirt, and looked at it like it was a puzzle with a single missing piece. It shouldn't exist. And yet, here it was. Sitting smugly on his armrest, humming its silent tune of betrayal. That was the moment. Not the discovery. Not the confrontation that would come later. But this. This second. This quiet unspooling of routine. Because the shirt wasn't just a shirt. It was the first domino. The first fracture in the glass. And no matter how careful she'd been, how sweet, how convincing, how practiced in her smiles, she couldn't unplace it. Couldn't rewrite this moment. And he would never forget it. Not because it shouted, but because it whispered. Dinner was different now. Not bad. Not angry. Just measured. Everything portioned. Words. Smiles. Even eye contact, carefully rationed. She spoke with warmth, sure, but it was the kind of warmth you feel through glass, not skin. He listened, nodded, even laughed where appropriate. They still laughed, technically. They still touched, occasionally. They still shared the same bed. But none of it meant what it used to. It was all choreography now. A relationship wearing itself like a costume. She called it growing. They'd been married long enough to know each other's phrases. She'd always talked about evolution, self-betterment, reinvention. Lately, she used the word boundaries more. Not angrily. Not even as a warning. Just as a soft, progressive idea slipped into sentences. I think we both need more space to grow. Let's not be so codependent anymore. It's healthy to have some individual time. He nodded. Of course it was. He wasn't the jealous type. Never had been. He liked that she had her own friends, her own hobbies, her own life. But lately, it felt like he was no longer even a guest in it. And then came the passwords. It started with her laptop, closed now, always. Not left open on the kitchen counter like before, where she used to browse recipes or edit photos of them from road trips. Then the phone. Subtle. A new swipe pattern. A faint click of the lock before she set it down. He noticed the first time she did it mid-conversation. Like muscle memory. Not suspicious. Just habitual. Defensive. She smiled at him when he paused, mid-sentence, and raised an eyebrow. Work stuff, she said. You know how strict they are now. Everything's sensitive. She didn't work in security. She did interior design. He said nothing. He watched her more now. Studied. Not in paranoia, but in something worse, quiet disbelief. Hoping to catch the flaw in his own thinking. Hoping he was the one being distant. But the signs piled. Little things. She forgot his favorite cereal, but remembered to buy almond milk for a smoothie phase that never materialized. She double-booked over their movie night twice in 1 week, with 2 different friends who he never actually saw. She left for errands without her purse once. Her whole purse. Said she didn't need it. She was more cheerful lately. That part was especially cruel. She'd come home lit up, energized, as if some invisible sun was charging her from somewhere else. She hummed in the kitchen again. She danced a little while folding laundry. She wore lipstick to the grocery store. And yet, the tension between them was thicker than ever. One night, just before bed, she pulled out a new journal. Leather-bound, no title. He asked about it. She smiled, almost apologetic. Just a habit I'm trying to build. Personal reflection. Stuff I don't even fully understand yet. Then she added, I think it's important we don't read each other's stuff without permission. And just like that, the book was off limits. Her thoughts off limits. The last time she journaled, she'd read whole entries aloud to him while they lay tangled in each other, sharing wine. Now, it had a drawer. A spot. A key. He said nothing. Then came the almost. It was late. Past midnight. She'd fallen asleep beside him, deep and twitching. He lay still, staring at the ceiling fan counting rotations. That whirring hum had become a sort of lullaby, something to focus on that wasn't her breathing. Her phone, for once, was left on the nightstand. Screen down. Plugged in. He hesitated. Then reached. He didn't open it. Just turned it over. And froze. The lock screen glowed with a photo he'd never seen of her, standing on a dock somewhere, golden hour light hitting her face just right. But what caught him wasn't the photo. It was the hand on her waist. Male. Tan. Familiar in posture, unfamiliar in identity. Cropped just enough to not reveal the face. But that grip, that casual intimacy, was not accidental. She had told him she was at a spa retreat that weekend. With Michelle and Ava. He even packed her bag for her, left a note tucked into her socks. Love you, grow wild, he wrote. He remembered because she laughed at the phrasing, called it weird but cute. This wasn't a spa. This was somewhere else. His thumb hovered. The phone buzzed. A notification from an app he didn't recognize. Vault updated. He put it down. Gently. Face down again. As if it hadn't happened. She stirred beside him, rolled away, murmuring something soft and unintelligible. He stared into the dark for a long time. Not angry. Not broken. Just awake now. Entirely. The way you are when a sound wakes you, but you're not sure what it was. So you stay still. And you listen. He listened. He didn't speak. He just watched. It happened on a Tuesday, which somehow made it worse, too ordinary to deserve a revelation, yet here it was. He wasn't even looking for it. That part stung the most. He wasn't snooping, or lurking, or peeling back layers of her privacy. No, he was trying to fix the damn sink. Under the cabinet, lying on his back, wrench in hand, flashlight wedged awkwardly between his jaw and shoulder. The slow drip had turned into a thin stream, and he'd finally decided to handle it himself. That's when he reached for the old rag bin they kept beneath the cleaning supplies. A stack of hand towels, folded loosely into a cracked plastic container. He grabbed one, then another, then paused. Not because of what he saw, but because of what he felt, soft silk. Too smooth, too new, out of place. He pulled it out and blinked. A blindfold. Black. Satin. Still scented faintly of perfume, but not hers. He knew her scent. This was floral, sharp, expensive. Alien. And attached to it, balled loosely in the corner of the bin like discarded lingerie, was a matching silk necktie, deep burgundy, embroidered faintly with a small monogram. SW, not his initials. Not hers. Not anyone's he knew. It wasn't the items themselves that crushed something in his chest. It was the location. This wasn't hidden. This wasn't concealed in a locked drawer or a suitcase double-zipped beneath the bed. This was here, among old rags and cleaning cloths, tossed casually, confidently, in a place he accessed weekly, as if he wasn't a threat, as if he was blind. And that was it. That was the moment, the shift, the exact second the final thread of benefit of the doubt snapped clean. Because if she could leave this here, this intimate little secret marked by another man's initials, in the same plastic bin where he kept the towel he used to dry her wine glasses every night, then she wasn't afraid of being caught. She was certain he would never look, certain he would stay in the warm, clueless fog she'd wrapped around him for months. And for a while, she'd been right. But no more. He stood up slowly, knees popping. He didn't rush, didn't call her, didn't storm through the house. He folded the blindfold and tie with deliberate care, slipped them into the pocket of his flannel, and went back to tightening the pipe, finishing the job he came to do. That was the last thing he fixed for her. When he wiped down the sink afterward, he did it methodically, like closing a scene. The house was quiet, eerily so. She was out, coordinating with a client. Her latest term for disappearing into places where cell signals died and questions weren't welcome. He sat at the dining table, turned on his laptop, and opened a blank spreadsheet. This wasn't rage. This was inventory. He started listing assets, accounts, logins, points of vulnerability. The kind of mental map you build not when you want to argue, but when you want to disappear clean. He wasn't going to confront her. He was going to outmaneuver her. The rest of the evening passed in an uncanny stillness. The kind that settles in right before a storm, when birds stop chirping and trees go rigid in anticipation. When she returned, she was glowing. Her cheeks rosy, a subtle shimmer on her collarbone, like she'd been laughing in candlelight. "You fixed the sink?" she asked, tossing her keys in the bowl by the door. He looked up from his screen and nodded once. "Yeah, no more drip." She kissed his cheek like nothing had changed, like the silence in his eyes was still the same one she'd learned to ignore. She poured herself a glass of white wine, hummed a half-song while scrolling her phone, then wandered upstairs. He watched her go, watched the sway in her step. She never asked what he'd been working on, never noticed the spreadsheet reflected in his glasses. Of course she didn't. She still believed the illusion held, still believed the stage lights were blinding him. But he was past the theater now, past rehearsals. He had entered the planning phase. She just didn't know it yet. He finished his wine slowly, closed the laptop, and walked outside. The night air was cool, still carrying the last breath of summer. He stood in the yard and looked up at the window above the garage apartment. The light was on, same light as always. Soft, yellow, steady. He wondered if that man, whoever SW was, had stood at this very spot, looking at the same window, thinking he was winning, thinking he'd claimed something sacred. But he hadn't won. Not yet. Because the real game hadn't started. Not until now. It was supposed to be a dinner. Just dinner. Casual. With friends. Her idea, of course. One last gathering before the holidays. Something to reconnect, she said. All fake warmth and curated cheer. She wore the red dress. The one she only brought out when she needed attention to land soft and heavy in a room. He wore calm. Buttoned it up like armor. Said little. Smiled when he needed to. Played the role. Until the wine came out and the lights dimmed, and she started telling that story again. The one where she's the misunderstood dreamer married to the overly logical man who doesn't know how to feel. Everyone laughed politely. No one saw his fingers tighten around the stem of his glass. "He's so practical," she said, beaming at the table. "I swear, if I told him I wanted to swim across the ocean, he'd ask if I packed enough water." The laughter came again, and she glanced at him, expecting the usual smirk, the shrug, the let it slide. What she got instead was silence. Eyes locked. "Steady," she faltered, just slightly. "What?" she asked, tilting her head, still performing. "Nothing," he said, voice low. "I just think it's funny how you're so comfortable rewriting me for a better punchline." The table tensed. The smiles thinned. She laughed again, forced this time. "Oh, come on. It's just a joke. Lighten up." He stood, calm, cold, tapped his glass gently with his ring. The sound sharp, clear, surgical. Actually, he said, since we're sharing, I think I'd like to tell a story too. Her smile froze. Maybe not now, she said, the warning tucked behind her voice. People are here to have fun. Exactly, he replied. And who doesn't love a good plot twist? The guests went quiet. One couple shifted uncomfortably. Another sipped quickly. He turned to her. You remember 2 weeks ago? When you said you were at that client meeting downtown, working late on that design pitch? She blinked. Yes. And you left your tablet open when you got home, he continued, his tone still polite. I noticed a location log you forgot to clear. It wasn't downtown. It was in Ridgewater. Specifically, a boutique Airbnb on Solace Avenue. Her lips parted. He watched it happen, the flicker of panic, the quick calculation behind her eyes. You're tracking me now, she snapped. That's the takeaway? He asked. That I saw what you didn't hide well enough? It's not what it looks like, she said, too fast. I met a friend. I just needed space. God, why are you making it sound like you were with another man? He finished for her. Because you were. And not just then. She folded her arms. So what? You're gonna humiliate me in front of everyone. I'm not humiliating you, he said, voice sharpening. I'm just letting the truth do what it does. You lit the match. I'm just letting it burn. She laughed short, bitter. You've always had this martyr complex. Like everything I do is an attack on you. Maybe if you paid more attention, careful, he interrupted. Don't mistake your guilt for my neglect. I noticed everything. The wine you stopped drinking because he prefers white. The playlist that changed from indie to synth pop overnight. The scarf in the laundry that smelled like someone else's cologne. You didn't even try to hide it. You just assumed I'd stay quiet. Her expression twisted. You stopped making me feel alive. You stopped seeing me. No, he said. I saw you. I saw you changing. I saw you practicing your new face in the mirror before dinner. I saw you shrink the parts of yourself that used to love me and stretch the ones that belonged to someone else. You didn't want to be seen. You wanted to be worshipped. Blindly. She looked at the guests, no help there. They were frozen. No one knew where to look. You don't understand how lonely it's been, she said, voice cracking. I needed more. So you lied, he said, stepping forward now. Not just to me. To all of them. To everyone who believed in us. You wore loyalty like a costume and expected applause for the performance. You told him you were stuck with a boring man. You told me I was your forever. And then you put his initials on your skin and hid it under silk. You told 2 stories and thought they'd never meet. Her breath hitched. She stepped back slightly. The mask cracked. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she whispered. I didn't mean, yes, you did, he said. Every message. Every touch. Every lie. You meant all of it. Because it made you feel powerful. Desired. Important. You wanted a man who didn't know the cost of loving you. Because you were tired of being loved without conditions. She covered her mouth. Her shoulders curled inward. The red dress, the smile, the whole illusion, it was gone now. Just fabric on bone. Please, she said, voice nearly gone. Stop. I already have, he said. I stopped trying to hold on to someone who let go of me months ago. Then he sat down. Calm. Still. And watched her unravel across from him. That was the final blow. Not the truth. Not the shame. But the fact that he didn't walk away. He stayed. And let her sit in the ashes. She followed him outside, still gripping the edges of her dignity like a torn dress, stumbling through emotions she used to control like chess pieces. You're overreacting, she hissed, the echo of her heels scraping across the porch like an afterthought. I was darting toward the windows where shadows of their guests lingered in awkward silence. We're both exhausted. I made a mistake, but this is cruel. He said nothing. Just stood in the cool air, back turned, as if she was a stranger asking for direction she already knew. You act like you've never let me down, she snapped, voice rising with desperation now, cracking under the weight of her unraveling. You shut down, you disappeared into your routines, into that damn spreadsheet life of yours. You made me feel invisible long before anyone else ever touched me. He turned then, slowly, calmly, like he was turning a page he'd already read too many times. No, he said, voice even. You didn't feel invisible. You felt unadmired. There's a difference. I saw you. I gave you everything, space, trust, silence when you wanted it, presence when you asked. But admiration? That's what you sold yourself for. You didn't want partnership. You wanted worship. Her mouth opened, but the words died in her throat. She took a step closer, softer now. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't plan any of this. It just happened. I was confused. You used to chase me, remember? You used to look at me like I was the answer to something. You stopped being the answer, he replied, the second you started asking someone else the questions. Her face twitched. A flicker of something, a memory, maybe, of who they used to be. But she pushed again. You'll never find someone who knows you like I do. Who understands you. Who tolerates your moods, your routines, your quiet little world. I've held space for you in ways no one else ever would. His eyes narrowed just slightly. You didn't hold space. You built a stage. And the moment the spotlight dimmed, you looked for a new audience. Her voice cracked now, anger giving way to pleading, guilt bleeding into each syllable. You don't understand what it's like to feel empty in your own home. To feel like a ghost in the mirror. I needed to feel alive again. I needed to be seen. You were seen, he said. You just weren't applauded. And instead of asking why, you rewrote the script and cast yourself as the victim. She was trembling now, mascara smudging beneath, eyes wide with disbelief. So what? This is it? You're done? You're just gonna stand there and pretend like I meant nothing? Like none of it mattered. His expression didn't change. You mattered, he said. But what you became, that doesn't. Her breath hitched, hands clenched at her sides like fists with no one left to hit. You don't have to do this. We can fix it. I can change. I'll end it. I'll delete everything, I swear. Just, don't throw us away. He stepped closer, not in affection, but finality. You ended it the moment you made him feel like more and me feel like less. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm burying what you already killed. Her body sagged under the weight of that sentence, as if the ground itself had tilted. Please, she whispered, voice barely audible. Please, just come back inside. We can talk. Not here. Not like this. He looked past her, through the window, to the table they once shared, the people still sitting with hands wrapped around wine glasses and unfinished sentences. Then he looked at her. You wanted everyone to see the version of us you wrote. Now they've seen the truth. Let them sit with it. She reached out, fingertips grazing his sleeve. You don't have to be cruel. This isn't cruelty, he said. This is clarity. And then, nothing. No more words. Just silence. A silence so thick it pressed against her like a second skin. He turned and walked back toward the house, not to rejoin the party, but to gather what was his and leave her standing there, alone in the dark, surrounded by the debris of her performance. She didn't follow this time. Didn't beg again. She just watched him go, her mouth slightly open, chest heaving, no longer certain if she was still acting or if the pain had finally become real. And as the door shut behind him, the night swallowed her whole. It's been 14 months. Long enough for the world to forget her name, but not long enough for her to forget mine. She doesn't go by her married name anymore. Doesn't have a reason to. The job at the design firm disappeared 3 weeks after everything collapsed, when whispers turned into screenshots and silence turned into blocked contacts. Turns out client meetings held in boutique rentals aren't covered under company policy. Her carefully curated online presence, filtered brunches, motivational quotes, staged book club selfies vanished overnight. She tried starting fresh under a new handle, but no one followed. Her so-called circle thinned out faster than spilled wine on white linen. The lover? Gone before the dust settled. He didn't want the fallout. Didn't want a woman so exposed, so publicly discarded. And the moment she stopped being a secret, she stopped being desirable. Friends she once defended tooth and nail won't answer her calls. Family, exhausted by the drama she swore never happened, doesn't even respond to her birthday messages. She moved to a cheaper apartment, sold the car she used to clear her head on long drives that led nowhere honest, and now works part-time at a boutique she used to shop in. But what she never stopped doing was reaching out. At first, it was guilt wrapped in performance. Text trying to provoke emotion, to bait a reaction. I just wish you'd let me explain. Then it turned to longing. I miss your laugh. No one ever made me feel safe like you did. Then desperation. We were soulmates. Don't you feel that? Even now? And finally, silence. A brief one. Just long enough for me to think she'd finally faded. But she came back. Of course she did. She always came back when no one else answered. This time, it was a knock at my door. Hair tangled, makeup smudged, jacket too big on shoulders that looked too small. No script, no charm, just what eyes and a voice too soft for the woman I used to know. Please, she whispered. Just talk to me. I looked at her, and for the first time, truly saw her, not the woman I loved, not the liar I lost, but a stranger with my memories in her eyes. She wasn't powerful anymore. She wasn't mysterious or magnetic. She was small, brittle, not because I broke her, but because she broke herself and thought I'd sweep up the pieces. I didn't speak right away. I didn't invite her in. I just studied her like you might study a faded photograph, familiar shapes, but no warmth behind the ink. You loved who you could be with me, I finally said, not who I was. And when that wasn't enough, you rewrote the story and cast me as the villain so you could play the victim. Her lip trembled. That's not true. I tilted my head. You don't get to define truth anymore. She tried again, softer. But I still love you. I nodded. Then I hope it haunts you. Her face crumpled like paper. You're not the man I married. I almost smiled. Neither are you. And then I shut the door. Not with violence. Not with bitterness. Just finality. She stood there for a few seconds longer, waiting for something that wasn't coming. Then she walked away. I haven't heard from her since. Maybe she finally understood. Or maybe she found someone else's doorstep to haunt. Either way, it doesn't matter. She's a ghost in a life I no longer live. I don't miss her. I don't hate her. I don't even remember what it felt like to love her. All I see now is a story I survived. Thanks for listening. Let me know where you're watching from and what you would have done if it were your wife.